this afternoon. I know it's Saturday afternoon, but we've just come back from Savusavu. We had consultations there in Savusavu. We've been traveling around Fiji for the past couple of weeks, going to different parts of Fiji and getting the public's input. We've also had consultations with high schools. We've been to a number of high schools throughout Fiji. We'll be continuing to do that in the next few weeks. In the consultation process, what we are doing is essentially trying to inform the public about the government finances, about how the budget system works, what are some of the things that government takes into consideration, and also informing you what is the state of the Fijian economy at the moment. And also we're trying to educate people, so when we stand up in Parliament and somebody says foreign reserves, debt to GDP ratio, you know exactly what they're talking about. Sometimes a lot of these terms people don't understand. Also, I just wanted to inform you what is going to happen. Once we have the budget consultations, the Permanent Secretary for Economy who's here, she's already had one round of consultations with all the permanent secretaries from the other ministries. In about 2 weeks' time, then I sit down together with all the other ministers and their permanent secretaries. I sit down with my permanent secretary on one side, and then on the other side we again go through the consultations, decide on the budget figures. In June sometime, we will have to announce the budget. So as you know, from last year we started announcing the budget in the evening. And the reason why we do it in the evening is that a lot more people get to listen to the budget, a lot more people get to hear it. Once we announce the budget, then by law we have to wait for a week, and then Parliament debates the budget. We debate the budget, and the budget gets passed. And our budget, of course, now the financial year starts from 1st of August to the 31st of July. Nothing gets approved in the budget until Parliament approves it. But the only one thing that does come into effect immediately after we announce the budget, should we announce any increase or decrease in duties or tariff. So for example, if at night time I stand up at 7 o'clock and deliver the budget, after midnight, if we announce any duty increase on cigarettes, it comes into effect straight after midnight. That's how the system works. Now, of course, today you can listen to this. Some of you may want to make submissions after this. Some of you may want to make submissions next week. And you can do that also. We'll give you the address to which you can send your submissions to. If you want to email it, you want to post it, you can deliver it also. So let's start off, ladies and gentlemen, with the first slide. The other thing is also that some people, we've been to some places where people actually turn up because they've got some personal problem or got some personal issues, some land issues, whatever it is. If that is the case, we have got staff sitting at the back over there. Over there? Yeah, we've got staff at the back. If you go to them now, you can deal with it. They'll take your complaint down, they take the papers, and we can deal with that. This is basically for the budget consultations. But of course, if you have any personal problems, you can go back and they'll take all your complaints. Okay, so the first slide. These figures, by the way, are put together by the Reserve Bank of Fiji. Not put together by us, by the Reserve Bank of Fiji. This shows when and how the economy has been growing in Fiji. So we've gone back to 2008, and if the line is above, that means the economy has been growing. So the longer the line, the better it is. You saw that in 2008, during the cyclone time, there was a downturn in the economy. The economy went into negative growth of 1.4%. But since then, for the past 7 years, the economy has been growing straight up. Now, why is it important to understand whether the economy is growing or not? Because when the economy grows, that means there's jobs being created. That means there's more business activity. That means that people have more opportunities to do a lot more things. And of course, the longer the line, the better it is. We had Cyclone Winston here. We in fact were projecting that the growth rates will be higher. But because of Cyclone Winston, you can see the growth rate has gone down to 2% over here. Nonetheless, we expect for next year and going forward for the growth rate to be 3.2%, 3.3% or so. Next slide, please. Now, what are the things that makes the economy grow? So agriculture contributed about 0.31% to that growth. Fisheries was very low, 0.02. Forestry was even lower, 0.01. Manufacturing was quite high, 0.56. As you know that we make a lot of things in Fiji now, a lot of factories, a lot of items are being made here. This also includes sugar production, not sugar cane production, but sugar production. Of course, the construction industry has contributed 0.3%. By the way, these figures are as of October 2016, which is immediately a few months after Winston. Mining, electricity, water. The financial services contributed 0.39%. Similarly, transport, wholesale, retail, 0.3%. You can see that we have what we call a broad cross-section of areas that contributed to the growth in Fiji. Now, for any government, it is important that we don't rely only on one or two things to help us grow. Because, for example, if we only relied on, say, tourism, then if a cyclone came and all the tourism properties got damaged, it will really badly affect you. If you just relied, say, on agriculture only, you say that was really high, and you had a cyclone that could damage the agriculture sector, we would suffer a lot. So for any government, our job is to make sure that many things contribute to the economy. Okay. Next one. So what do the Reserve Bank look at? They looked at the value of the building permits between January to September 2016. It went up by 12.7%. The value of work in place, in other words, the amount of construction that is going on, 10.5%. Domestic cement sales. You know, we don't buy cement to keep it underneath your house. You buy cement to build something. So of course, when people are buying cement, then you know they're building. So whenever there's construction, construction is good because construction creates jobs. If you want to put up a building, you need somebody to dig the foundation. You need somebody to lay the cement. You need somebody to put the steel. You need somebody to paint the roof. You need somebody to put the tiles. You need the plumber. You need somebody to do the electrical cables. So everybody gets money in their pocket. When all these people get money in their pocket, they're going to spend that money. When they're going to spend the money, it creates economic activity. That's why construction is very important. The import of investment goods, these are like machinery and other things that we buy from overseas. So when we're buying more machinery, that means we are having more factories, we're setting up more plants and equipment to be able to produce more. Government, this is CapEx, means capital expenditure. Government capital expenditure went up by 7.8%. These are the areas that went down: new investment lending, lending for real estate, lending for construction. We expect this immediately after the cyclone. You can see the cyclone was sometime here in February of last year. Now these are the things that we call consumption indicators. New vehicle registration went up by 27.5%. You can see a lot more new vehicles in Fiji now. Second-hand vehicle registration went up by 7.8%. New lending to wholesale retail trade, that means the businesses were growing. The retail sector went up by 30.2%. Import of consumption goods. Nearly everything that we have is actually comes from overseas. This gentleman here is wearing a watch that's not made in Fiji. This shirt he's wearing, it may be sewn in Fiji, but the fabric comes from overseas. The leather shoes, it may be made in Fiji, but the leather comes from overseas. When you see more and more of these things, this gentleman's got a pen in his pocket here. The pen comes from overseas. So when you see more and more of these types of things being bought, that means people are spending more money. When people are spending more money, that means there's confidence in the economy. PAYE, collections. In other words, the tax you pay when you earn salary. That went up in collections by the FERCA. That means people are either getting paid more money or there are more jobs being created. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. So in other words, there are a lot more jobs advertised. But that advertisement is only talking about advertisements in the Fiji Times, not the Fiji Sun. We've asked the Reserve Bank to look at advertisement that is in the Fiji Sun also, because, for example, government advertises only in the Fijian for jobs. That does not capture all of it. Personal remittances, that went up by 5%, sorry. Personal remittances is what? Is people sending money from overseas. We have a lot of rugby players who work overseas, people in the British Army, people who work as security guards, your friends and family and relatives, maybe living in Australia and New Zealand, who send money. We have nurses working overseas. These people are sending money back home. The level of money they've sent has gone up by 5%. Variable consumption, even though VAT went down from 15% to 9%, we are collecting a lot more in VAT. When people go and spend money, because people have more money in their pocket. So instead of buying 1 pen, they might buy 2 pens. So they pay the VAT twice. So that's how the revenue has been increasing. New lending to private individuals actually went down by 4.7. This is what I'm saying. You see, in 2005, there were 6,088 second-hand vehicles registered in that 1 year. And there were 3,363 brand new vehicles registered that year. You compare that to now. 6,088, 10,152. 3,363, nearly 5,000 vehicles. Obviously, you can see the spike up here because we reduced the duty also on hybrid cars. We reduced the duty overall also. We made it zero-rated duty for hybrid cars, and also then for generally the duty for cars below 2,500 cc, we reduced the duty. But it also means that people are spending more money. You know, and people in Fiji too, they like, when they do well, they want to buy a car. They don't use the bus anymore. They do buy a car. It's a sign of, like, so your social status is improving. Retail sales, this speaks for itself. We measure how is retail sales going. And you can see that retail sales has been significantly growing in the way forward. So that speaks for itself. Now, this is very important, inflation. Our target, as you can see, since 2014, excuse me, was to keep inflation below 2%. Spiked up slightly here, but then it went up after Winston. So in Viti Levu, to buy a bundle of beans after Cyclone Winston, you know, the long bean, cost about $5. Some places $7. A bunch of bananas in Viti Levu in Suva was costing $20. All the banana trees went down. Yangona in the Western Division is being sold for $110 a kilo. Why? Because the cyclone damaged a lot of things. So when there is a lack of supply and more demand, the price will go up. So you can see, I mean, beans now cost about $2 a bundle, but Yangona is still expensive because Yangona takes a longer time to grow. So you can see the inflation here went up, but now it's coming back down. It's gone up down to about 5.5%. And we expect that to come down even more. Now, this is something a lot of people don't know about. When we talk about foreign reserves, like I said, okay, I'm wearing this watch, I'm wearing this ring, shirt that I'm wearing, this belt that I've got, all of this comes from different parts of the world. So maybe the watch comes from Japan, maybe the belt comes from Australia, maybe the ring comes from America, I don't know. But say that all these things come from different countries. This mic is not made in Fiji, right? This mic may come from China. This projector here is made, say, in Australia. The screen is not made in Fiji. Maybe that comes from New Zealand. So when you need to buy all these things, you'll buy it in the currency that that country, the product comes from. You have to deal with US dollars, Japanese yen, Australian dollars, New Zealand dollars, Singapore dollars, euros. So we need to have that amount of currency to trade in. They're not going to expect Fijian dollars. You need to have foreign currency. So a foreign currency is what a lot of countries say that if you have very low foreign reserves, that's when you can go bankrupt. Because you don't have enough money to buy things. So the higher the foreign reserves, the better it is. And international benchmark says, you see this line here, they say that this is how much money at least you should have, which is 4 months worth of trading. At least 4 months of trading of foreign reserves you should have. 2005 we had $549 million, about 1.5 months worth of foreign reserves. Today we have $1.9 billion. We're doing a lot better. Lot better. So you're up there, now it's up there. So we have about 5.2 months worth of foreign reserves. We had about 5.9 in 2015, now it's about 5.2. So of course, the more we sell our goods overseas, we sell sugar, we sell vegetables, we trade in things, we get more foreign reserves ourselves. This is the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit means is that every year in Fiji, since we became independent, all governments in Fiji have spent more than what they have. All governments. It's only been 3 times where we've spent less than what we have. It's what you call a surplus. You see this line that's zero. That's what you call a balanced budget. Anything above that, that's a surplus. So that year we had a surplus. All the other years we were at deficit. So the idea is, the shorter this line, the better it is. The longer it is, the worse it is. You can see we've been trying to reduce our budget, making this line shorter. We of course again here we went down from a minus 3.2, 1.6. But this is because of Winston. Winston has made us spend a lot more money. We lost 1/3 of the value of our GDP. In other words, the total wealth that we have, Cyclone Winston took away 1/3 of it. $1.6 billion US. So as a result of that, we have to build things. You know, this Help for Homes, you may have heard about that. It's costing us about $125 million. To rebuild all the schools in Fiji, at least the grade, what we call tier 3, 4, and 5 is costing us $132 million. A lot of bridges, roads, rehabilitation for crops. So if Cyclone Winston did not occur, this line would have been much shorter, would have been up till there. But that's what you call a deficit. So when people stand up in Parliament, they talk about deficit, that's what they mean. Now this is how much money we've been making as a government. We collect, we make money, of course. And we want to make more money, so we can spend it more on you. In 2004, the government then made $1.1 billion. Today we got $3.1 billion, nearly tripled it. So, you know, we've got departure tax when people, tourists when they come from overseas, they pay departure tax. When you go and visit overseas, the relatives at the border, you pay $200, it's included in your ticket. A lot of businesses who weren't paying taxes before, we've now changed the law so a lot of them are paying taxes. A lot of business people were chorrowing from the system. We made the laws a lot stricter, so they actually have to pay the tax. So our revenue has gone up. The good thing is when your revenue goes up, that means we have to borrow less. So the debt does not increase. What are the things that gives us revenue? So the value-added tax you pay, about 30%. Our total revenue is from VAT. Direct taxes, this is people who earn wages, you know, people who earn high wages, they actually pay taxes. People who, for example, pay company tax. All of those taxes are direct taxes. You have customs, you know, the duty that you pay at the border. I bring this watch, I pay 32% duty. I don't pay it, the shopkeeper pays it. And then he passes the 32% on to me. So at the border they pay the 32% duty, that's what you call customs. You also have things like duty on alcohol, cigarettes, all those sorts of things. They all fall within here. Service turnover tax, departure tax, stamp duty, all of these things contribute to give us the $3.1 billion. Next please. Now what we've done here together for you, we want to show you how much money we are spending on infrastructure development, which is roads, bridges, jetties, and all of those things. Health, education, access to justice, social protection. Social protection is what you call, you know, social welfare payment. Pensions, we pay money to disabled people, all those sorts of things, social protection. We also have access to justice. This is legal aid. A lot of people did not have legal aid access. So now we have legal aid offices in Savu, Nambuwalu, Labasa. In 2006, legal aid used to get $400,000. Today, legal aid gets about $5.2 million. Education. We spend over $500 million in education now. No school fees. We pay the school fees for your children. If they want to go to university, they don't have enough money, we pay for the university fees as a loan. Want to get a scholarship? People who are the top 630 students, we pay them the full scholarship, which they don't have to pay back. We, for example, over here, pay bus companies $21 million a year to carry your children to school for free or subsidized bus fare. Some of the bus companies aren't doing a good job. That's one of the issues that came out of this. Health, again, we've increased the funding for health. As you may have heard that the Minister for Health and the Permanent Secretary for Health, Permanent Secretary for Civil Service, they're going off to India in a couple of weeks' time. We need a lot more specialists. Last year, we increased the budget for all the doctors in Fiji. The doctors who work for the government. We increased it by 80%. Because we're paying our doctors very low salaries, so we want to pay them higher salaries to keep them in the system. A lot of the good ones would go and set up their own practice or go overseas. The other problem we have with health is there's a lack of specialists in Fiji. Not many ear, nose and throat specialists, people who can look after your kidneys, urologists, neurosurgeons, all of that. So we need to get people from overseas. But last year also we made an announcement that any person that becomes a doctor and works for the government, if they want to do any postgraduate studies, we pay for them for free. So if they want to go and do night classes, do postgraduate studies, FNU, we pay for them now because we want to create more specialists. Unfortunately, previous governments did not invest in our people, so we don't have any specialists. You can't do open heart surgery just because you got a medical degree. It takes 10, 15 years for you to become a specialist. We need to send our people away overseas for them to become specialists. And of course, infrastructure development is road, bridges and jetties. Now, this is very important. What do you call expenditure mix? So, this blue line is the operating expenditure, the orange line is the capital expenditure. So what is the difference? There are two types of spending that we have. One is the day-to-day running. Wages, salaries, buying a photocopying paper, paying for the fuel. Like we've come here, all the civil servants, we have to pay for the airline ticket, pay for the hire of cars if you hire cars. If one of them, say the drivers came, they had to stay at the hotel cost. That's what you call operating expenditure. Capital expenditure is the expenditure that you have to build things. So it's very important that any government spends a lot more money in capital expenditure. The operating expenditure, you spend it today, it's finished. It's gone. You've got nothing to show for it. But operating expenditure, you'll be building things. So in 10 years' time, that building is still there. So it's the same way that the example that I give is that if we all decided to go and have a party tonight, and we went to the ANZ Bank and say, we don't have enough money, can you give us $100,000, we want to have a party tonight at North Pole. And then night time, they give us the money, we go and have the party at North Pole. We'll finish all the drinks, finish all the food. You wake up in the morning, the food and drinks are gone, but the debt is still there. You got nothing to show for it. But if you went to the bank, HFC is here, you went to HFC and say, I want to borrow $100,000 because I want to build a new house. Or I want to build an additional bedroom to the house. You pay off the debt, the building is still there. You have the debt, you still have the building. So you got something to show for. So in 2004, 83% of the money that the government spent went into operating expenditure, day-to-day expenses. 17% went into assets, building of things. Today, we spend 60% in operating, but 40% in capital. So we're spending more money to build things, which is very important. Again, this shows the funding for roads, bridges and jetties. 2004, $55 million went to PWD. Today, $527 million. I'll also tell you one other thing. I don't know how many of you have been to Nandi recently. If you go to Nandi, there's a 4-lane highway that comes out of Nandi Airport, goes to Matintar, Namaka and all of that. Now, when you go there, you won't see any electrical poles like you have over here. There's no telecom poles. Why? We put it all underground. So we were building for the future. When Cyclone Winston took place, 6,000 kilometers of electrical cables went down because the power poles went down. Now we put it all back up. God forbid if we have another cyclone, it'll go down again. We have to put it back up again. Another cyclone, it'll go down again. We put it back up again. So the way that you do future-proof it or climate-proof it, you go underground. It costs you more money. It cost us about $20 million more to put the electrical cables underground. But it's best for the future. So those things cost money. And traditionally in Fiji, when they used to tar seal the roads or build the roads, you see most of the roads, the water pipe is underneath the road. Most places, the water pipe is underneath the road. So when the water pipe has a leak, the water comes out, it makes the road soft, then the cane truck comes, goes on top of the road, you get a pothole. They say, oh, there's a water leak. So they dig up the road, you fix up the water pipe, but you don't fix up the road. So these are the kind of things. So in the Nandi Namaka 4-lane roading, we've taken out all the water pipes, put it on the side of the road, where the footpath is, on that side. So if there's a water leak, they can fix it up. They don't have to dig up the road. So let's not damage one asset just because you want to fix up the other asset. So this is why some of the cost of these things are more because of the fact that we're trying to build for the future. Given more money for water and energy, as you know, before those of you who live in the rural areas and wanted electricity connected to the FEA, wanted yourself connected to the FEA grid, you had to give a 10% contribution. Now there's no more. Government does the entire funding. But of course we have a long list of people that need the electricity. We also now have the free water scheme. So people who have Water Authority Fiji connectivity, we give them 90,250 liters of free water a year if their income is less than $30,000 a year. Same thing with electricity. Electricity, the cost of a unit of electricity is about 34 cents a unit. But if you earn less than $30,000 a year, government subsidizes 17 cents. So FEA charges 34, but we give FEA 17 cents on the side to subsidize for low-income families. So it's better to do it that way than before. The old thinking was, because we want to keep the electricity cost down, make it cheaper for everybody. Why should the rich person also get the cheaper price? So we need to target our money properly. So everybody pays the price, the right market price, but if you want subsidy and you're low income, we pay the subsidy directly to FEA, only for those people. Education, again, as I mentioned, the funding for education has increased. We're giving about nearly $600 million a year now for education. This includes your TELs, your toppers, and all the schools. Of course, at the moment, we are doing a review of all the civil servant salaries too. So we're looking at how we should increase that, but do it in a very professional manner. Again, we have the free medicine, we have the recruitment of new nurses and doctors, a lot of construction going on, and that's the issue about the amount for funding for health. But again, let me emphasize the main challenge for the Ministry of Health is the lack of specialists in Fiji, the lack of doctors with a lot of knowledge. So, like a lot of specialist skill sets, we have only one person in Fiji. You don't have a brain surgeon in Fiji. So these are the kind of problems that we face. So we need to be able to get these people from overseas whilst we train our own people. Now this is what I was talking about earlier on. You see this blue line here, it essentially means all the way from here to here is how much we're making of what you call operating revenue. That's how much money we collect. Out of that, this area here is how much we spend. An operating expenditure, paying for our salaries, wages, fuel, running of the office. Government, for example, rents a lot of premises here. Madhuwata Provincial Council, we rent their premises, we have to pay them rent. That comes out of operating expenditure. And that's the savings we are making. So our operating savings, you can see, compared to 2004, is increased quite significantly. If we have savings, that means we have to borrow less to build. We can rely more on our savings. It also means that when we have, for example, a cyclone, we can respond really quickly. You can get $3-4 million very quickly, do like relief supplies, etc. Now, this is the most important one. This is what we call the debt to GDP ratio. This is not that important. What is important is this. As a percentage of your GDP, what is your debt? Now, how do you describe GDP? GDP is basically GDP stands for gross domestic product, which means essentially the wealth that we have as a country. So at the moment, the wealth, the GDP is about $10 billion. This is GDP, about 10. Huh? Now, I'll give you an example of how this is determined. Assuming that our wealth in Fiji was $100, assuming that Fiji made $100, and then we went and borrowed $20. If we borrowed $20 and we make $100, that means the amount of money that we have borrowed is 20%, right? 20 is 20% of 100. So our debt to GDP ratio is 20%. We have a wealth of $100, we borrow $20, our debt to GDP ratio is 20%. Now, assuming our wealth increases to $500, but we go and borrow $50. Now, $50 is more than $20. It's more than double. But as a percentage of $500, $50 is only 10%. So, your debt to GDP ratio comes down to 10%. Even though the amount of money that you're actually borrowing is more than what you did when you had only $100. You can see we made as a government our target to reduce our debt to GDP ratio. Around about 56 there. So since 2010, we've been reducing our debt to GDP ratio. Reducing our debt. But it's gone up here. Why? Because of Winston. Winston made us spend $205 million more that we did not anticipate that we would have to spend. So if Winston had not occurred, this line would have gone down even further. Would have come down there. That, I hope, if you have any questions, please ask me about it. It's very important to understand. A lot of people in Fiji talk about debt. So our government's got debt. Yes, government has got debt. Most people in the world have debts. It's how you can manage your debt is the most important issue. But overall, as a percentage of your GDP, you have to make sure that as a percentage of your GDP, your debt ratio goes down. There are countries like Japan, the debt to GDP ratio is nearly 100%. Very high levels of debt to GDP ratio. About 100% in one state. So that's the debt to GDP ratio. That's what we talk about. That's what we focus on. So for us, as a government, our target is to keep on getting this line to go down. Very important. But sometimes you get these spikes because of unanticipated expenses that may come up. That's why we don't like cyclones. Okay, next one. It's the last slide. So essentially, for those who may have come in late, the economy is set to grow by another 3.6%. It's unprecedented. You're looking at about 80 years of growth, continuous growth in the country. We have favorable prospects for the medium term. There's a lot of private sector investment going on. I haven't sort of driven around much in Labasa, but there's most certainly in Vitilevu. If you drive around, there's a lot of construction going on. People doing additional bedrooms, new factories being built, new shops being built, people doing their fences, etc. Of course, a lot of it, some of it, is also to do with the fact that there's a rebuild after the cyclone too. Increased private sector investment and optimism, prudent financial management. As you know, that we keep a very keen eye on our debt position. We're spending more in capital expenditure as opposed to operating. With broad-based growth, the broad-based growth that I talked about, we must have many things that contribute towards the growth of our economy. I'll give you an example. At the moment, Out of all the tourists that arrive in Fiji, 51% of them come from Australia. 16% comes from New Zealand. So nearly 68-69% of our total tourism arrivals come from Australia and New Zealand. That is not necessarily a good thing. Another 15% comes from North America. Then the others make up the balance. Because if, for example, the Australian economy does not do well, when the economy does not do well, that means the people from that country will travel less. So if you are planning to have a holiday overseas and you had a cyclone that hits Labasa, you're not going to travel overseas, right? So for us to depend on one country for that high percentage of arrivals is not a good thing. This is why we are doing what we call spreading our risk. We want more Indians to come to Fiji. We want more Chinese to come to Fiji. We want people from other countries to come to Fiji. So you increase the numbers, but as a percentage, you spread the risk. So if you depend on, say, 20% from Australia, 20% from India, 25% from North America, 15% from China, if one country does not do well, it does not affect us as badly. So that's what we call mitigating your risks and balancing and managing your risks. The foreign reserves are very comfortable at the moment, as I talked about, the $1.9 billion, and inflation is set to stabilize at 3%. So that's a very short presentation, ladies and gentlemen. You'll open up the floor. We like to keep it as informal as possible. Feel free to ask questions, make suggestions. Like I said, don't feel shy to ask any question. If you, however, want to make any submissions after this is the address you can send it to, budgetconsultationeconomy.gov.fj, email. You can post it there. If you're in Suva, you can deliver it to that office. So a lot of people, what they've done, they've come to these sessions, they've listened to it, and they said, oh, look, we've got some ideas, but we want to write it down, and we'll send it to you later. Some people have written submissions, they can give it to us here and now, and we've got the staff, they can collect it off you. Okay, so we'll open up the floor. Please feel free.